Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of the Coffee People podcast. While we put the show out into the world for free, it isn't free to create this content. This is my job. I mean, it's kind of a job. No, it's a job. Coffee People and the entire Roast West Coast Coffee Network depend on our industry partners and our paying subscribers to keep dropping these episodes week after week. Go to coffeepeoplepodcast.com to support the show. One time or monthly, you're making a huge difference to this little operation. Want a little something to show for your support? We got you. Check out the new merch, including hats, beanies, coffee cards, and journals. You'll find all the details on coffeepeoplepodcast.com. Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Coffee People podcast, which is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network and presented by Roastery Coffee Packaging. If you're a smart, small business roasting excellent coffees and you want a package to showcase them, you'll find what you're looking for at roastery.com. I'm Ryan Woldt, and this is the Coffee People podcast, where we meet interesting people connected to the world of coffee. Today, we're chatting with Noah Vernick of Anomaly Coffee Company, based in Long Beach, California. Noah is the co-founder and operator of Anomaly and a naturally energetic personality who started the company with a partner to pursue his entrepreneurial leanings and desire for collaboration. If you want to check out his coffee projects while you're listening today, head to anomaly.coffee.co on Instagram. Be sure to spell Anomaly, Anomaly. You can also find links in this show's podcast notes wherever you're listening and on coffeepeoplepodcast.com, where this show lives online. And now for the most important question I ask the audience during every show. Is your coffee cup full? Mine is with a medium roast I brewed in a French press. I don't know why, but the French press feels cozy to me, and it has been a chilly beginning to December. If you're wondering if I'm wearing a puffy coat while walking the dog to the coffee shop every day, the answer is yes, and I've gotten off track. If you haven't already, fill your cup now, because it is time for this Coffee People podcast conversation with Noah Vernick, co-founder, owner, operator of Anomaly Coffee Company in Long Beach, California. Noah, I'm excited you're here, and I think I'm ready to get going. Did you drink coffee this morning already?
I did not. I actually don't. It's funny. I generally have pretty high energy, and people are like, oh, you must drink 10 cups of coffee a day. And I'm like, nope, this is just kind of how I am. And I only started drinking coffee about 5 years ago, so I'd never really needed it. So I could go days without it. I really just enjoy it, and that's why I drink it. However, yeah, I mean, I just had a little protein shake that was in the fridge this morning, and just something quick to make sure I wasn't starving during this. So
I drink coffee, I think, more out of comfort and habit than anything, because I don't really get a lot of impact from caffeine at all. If I don't drink it, I don't get a headache like some people do or anything like that. But it just makes me feel safe.
That's a really interesting. It's like the normalcy and the habitual coffee drinking. I think we have changed our brewing system at home so much that I haven't developed that habit. We used to have an espresso machine, and then that was our first pop-up machine, and then we sold it to get business stuff, and then that left the home, and then we had an AeroPress, and then shortly after a drip machine, a Mocha Master. And so it's rotated so much that I never really developed that habit of how I brewed at home. So instead, I just kind of either quickly brew drip, or my girlfriend's doing an AeroPress. So I'm like, I'll just rinse it out and make my own. So it kind of just shifted a bunch, and I never really developed that habit of how to drink at home these days. But I used to have a habit of how I drank coffee. And that kind of leads into your first question, but I'll let you ask it.
But don't tell them you already know. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
What we really need to start out with is telling everyone listening who you are. What's your name? What's your company? What are you doing here?
Yeah, my name is Noah Vernick. I have the company called Anomaly Coffee Company, and we are a small coffee company in Long Beach, California. I always say that we're coffee roasters and a small pop up cafe, which is true. We like to bring more than just pop up coffee. We like to try to bring an experience. We try to bring a baker with us. If we can't, then we'll bring their baked goods. We try to bring music or DJs if we can, and then we'll try to set up a whole mock cafe wherever we go. So that's kind of our thing. We have a few wholesale clients. We're working on just building a small list of clients, maybe two or three wholesale clients max, and then doing the rest as a pop-up cafe. And that's what we do. When we do it out of Long Beach, we go to LA, we go to Orange County, we kind of go everywhere, but Long Beach, I would consider our home because we literally live here. So
I love Long Beach personally. I thought we might live there at one point, and a great biking community, which I think we're going to talk about in a little bit.
exactly, I love the bike.
At least in the last 10 years. I wouldn't say maybe before that. But before I get too far into a bunch of questions, I want to follow up on something you just said about the pop up and creating an experience for people, which I love personally as a restaurant hospitality lifer. You know, the idea that you're more than just this product you're giving, it's more than that exchange. When you do a pop-up, are you collaborating with a space, with a business, are you just showing up on a sidewalk and saying, stop me if you can? How do you create that? This is what we're going to do and when, and then how do people find you?
The way that I developed the business is just really unique to me. I basically just took this product of coffee and delivering it to people and just did it in the way that I felt made the most sense. I didn't have a background in being a barista. I didn't have a background in coffee. I just like taught myself everything and developed a business model that made me really happy and felt fulfilled. So, on that note, I basically reached out to everybody. I went to small businesses, I called organizations, corporate and not. I talked to small business owners. I sought after spaces I thought were really cool. And I did it all within the realm of collaborating with others. So you won't see us on like the side of the street or at a beach just randomly there. Generally, we like to be a part of something else. We like to collaborate with the small business in their space. We like to collaborate with even bigger corporations like REI or Patagonia and show up in their space and offer coffee to their customers. I always like to pitch that we can offer a really unique experience to the customers because it is really true. We offer coffee, yes, but we also have great service. We talk to our customers a ton. We like to learn why they're walking into REI. What are they getting at X store that we're at? What are they here for at this market? We like to do a lot of just normal things. It feels like a normal experience. It doesn't feel like you're entering a coffee shop or a cafe. It feels like you're just talking to somebody, and then by the way, you look down and there's coffee in your hand and you're enjoying it. So it's that kind of thing. We really like to work with as many businesses that we think have a similar brand values or relative vibe, I guess, of the business itself. And so that's the kind of thing we look for. And yeah, it's been working so far. The customer base has really appreciated coffee in those spaces because there isn't any already. So that's kind of how we've been going about that.
You and I are, I think, maybe one of very few members of a unique club, which is people who have stood in the parking lot of an REI serving coffee, which I did for 6 months last year on
Nice.
Saturdays. Well, let's learn a little bit more about what got you to this point, Noah. I'm wondering a little bit about you. Did you have a first experience? You said you've only been drinking coffee 5 years. What happened 5 years ago that
Yeah.
got you started and made you go, oh shit, this is going to be the future for me? Or maybe on a smaller scale, just, oh, this isn't too bad. You know, what were you doing then? What were you doing then for your life?
First, what got me into coffee was my girlfriend. She was a big coffee drinker and like couldn't wake up without it. And at first I was like, what are you doing? Why do you have to wake up without it? Or why can't you wake up without it? I can wake up fine. I feel like it's not good for you if you're kind of addicted to it. And then I started to drink it with her, and we were doing French press at that point. I was like, fine, I'll taste this thing, but I don't want to get addicted to it. And then and then I did a little bit of research behind coffee and found that it's not the worst thing in the world. Yes, there are addictive like characteristics of caffeine. However, it actually can benefit cognitive behavior. And so like cognition in general, and it helps people function better, and that's just the truth. And so I thought it was so bad, and I thought relying on it was horrible, but I realized that it wasn't as bad as I thought. So then I started to taste it, and then so my first experience with coffee was via French press, and we were going to our grocery store and buying coffee, and we were buying Stumptown, and I was tasting some of these like African coffees from Stumptown, and I was really surprised by how it tasted. I didn't have any really expectations of coffee. I didn't think it would be really bitter. I didn't really think about it because I really hadn't had it before that. But once I started tasting it black or even with a tiny bit of milk, I was really surprised by the flavor that I was getting from coffee, like how acidic it could be, but in a good way. And just different, what I recognized as like fruitiness or even savoriness or nutty and chocolatey, and in different stages of sipping it, how you could taste different things. And it was just really crazy to me. And that was my first experience. And I don't know, people think differently about Stumptown, but starting out drinking Stumptown, that's like pretty good coffee to drink, especially with coffee had roast date on it in the grocery store, and it was relatively, a few weeks post roast. So I don't know. It was pretty good. It was pretty good coffee, and I was yeah, just really impressed. And we were using like a blade grinder, like the little Cuisinart that you just throw it in one thing, and so with all that in mind, it was still coffee that impressed me and surprised me. So from there, I started to just really dive into it. And keep in mind, I was working in kitchens a bit as a cook, so I worked full time always after college, and then I would always get a part-time job as a cook because I grew up as a kid working in Jersey Mike's. So like from 14 to about 18, I was working in Jersey Mike's like a ton. I lived right across the street from Jersey Mike's, so I would walk to work, and my boss had a joke about me because I really loved working. He was like, "Come hang out. We need help." And so I would just like be like, "Okay, my outfit's in the dryer." I would just grab it out of the dryer because I just worked the night before, and then I would come over and work for a few hours and help close, and then I got really good at that really fast. My brother was in Jersey Mike's before me, and I was really competitive with him, so I wanted to keep up. And when he was 15 and started, I was just turning 14, and I was like, I want to do the same thing that he's doing. So I got into Jersey Mike's. I learned really quickly. I kind of was like a store shift leader, like closing, opening, and everything like that, like counting money and reporting all that stuff out at like 16, So I was very trusted, and had a really good group of leaders there, and they taught me really good skills and how to keep the stations very clean and how to keep things organized and good rules of behavior and FIFO. And so with all of that and my college degree, I wanted to get back into the kitchen, but a real commercial kitchen, like a restaurant, not more of a fast food setting. So I was cooking in a few kitchens, and then COVID hit. Or sorry, I was cooking in one kitchen, and then COVID hit. And then I came back to Maryland, and then I cooked in another kitchen, which was really cool and was a great opportunity. And then I flew and moved to California, stopped cooking in kitchens, and then yeah, this is when this started. So I know I kind of jumped around a little bit, but I was just painting the picture.
What I think is great is you really exemplified somebody who was able to get a job as a young person. I'm getting older, and when I'm looking at the world, one of the things I think we struggle with is that younger people don't have the opportunity to get jobs as often anymore. When I
Yeah,
turned 14, it was just assumed I would get a job for someone who wasn't my parents. I was already working
yeah,
for them in
right.
the restaurant business. But I could go out and apply for a half a dozen jobs in fast food or wherever and get one. those jobs are harder to come by now. Not only are there not as many because of automation, but there are adults who need those jobs to support, their families. And
Yeah.
so it's more challenging. So people are getting into the workforce later, which has its own domino effect of ramifications. Like if you don't like learn how to handle money when you're 14, you might not be ready to start your own business when you're 23 or whatever age, right? So you
Yeah.
learned all these skills that you're now reusing. So I think that's a great
Absolutely.
example of the benefit of working, especially when you're younger. So at some point, you fly back from the East Coast. You mentioned very briefly, like you stopped working in kitchens, and then Anomaly came about. There's got to be something in there that made you start thinking, you know what, I could do something in coffee, and I could start
Yeah.
a business. Like working for someone else to going to being your own business owner and entrepreneur are two drastically different things. What made you think you could do that? What inspired that? Kind of what was that tipping point?
It was pretty clear cut in the timeline, I would say. I had a really good friend that I haven't seen in about 3 years, and he was over this way in California. And I was like, come on, we got to link up. We haven't seen each other in such a long time. And he came by and spent the night here. And we just spent a lot of time together that we kind of caught up on a lot of things. And even back in the day, like 4 years prior, he was living in New York City, and I would go visit him and stay with him for a bit. And we would always be walking around the city just spitballing business ideas. And we had these, or a shared document of some sort, that we had all our business ideas jotted down on. So kind of seeing him sparked that again, and we chatted a lot about businesses. And I'm the guy who, if you have something you want to do, I will hold you to it and push you at it. And so together we wanted to do it. And I said, well, why are we not doing it? And we couldn't answer that question. And so we were like, okay, we want to do this. We want to serve people. We want to create an experience. We want to, all the things that aligned with what coffee could accomplish. And so we kind of settled saying, why don't we just do coffee? That would be cool. It'd be really fun. We could serve people coffee. Really enjoyed coffee at that point. This is like 4 years into my coffee enjoyment life cycle, I guess. We both settled on doing coffee. And so we figured that would be the best way to have a product that we could create and people would enjoy right in front of us, and we could get feedback and we could communicate with customers, and we were directly in front of customers. Something that I missed in kitchens because I was back in the kitchen and I couldn't talk to customers. And even at my last kitchen job, as I knew I was moving to California and wrapping up that job, every time I would finish a brunch shift and I would finish serving, like finish all my orders and have all the food made and plated and all the front of house walked it out, and I was cleaning up my station, I would go out into the lobby and I would collect plates and talk to customers. And customers are like, "Is this your restaurant?" And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no." I was like, "This is not my restaurant. I just really enjoy talking to customers. I want to know how you enjoyed it. I made that for you. Like, I made all these things for you." So that's the kind of thing I really missed. And we knew that coffee was that. So with together, we started the business. When we would brainstorm, I was like, let's just meet for 6 months straight and see what happens. So we met for 6 months, once a week or even more, started to brainstorm every day. Or every time we met, we had ideas of names of businesses, like 20 names. And just, this was pre chat GPT. So these were, these were all our names. And so, we would go through all those names, cross them off, finally got to a point where we just didn't like anything and just talked about what the name wanted to be. And we said we want it to be different. We want to represent a brand that just feels like nothing you've experienced in coffee, and we want to be an anomaly. And we were like, why don't we just do Anomaly? That sounds like a cool name. And so we kind of stuck with that, and then we started that, and that's really how Anomaly started. And so I started with the co-founder who's no longer part of the business, but we're still good friends and cordial, and I talk to him regularly. It was kind of just literally like the most kind of generic version of just doing. We just did it. We just spent 6 months. We did it. We followed through with a vision, no matter how successful or not it ended up. We just executed it. And so that's kind of what happened.
It sounds like the business partnership split was amicable, and you can get into that if you'd like or not. I think the question that came up for me right away was knowing that you started with a partner when you no longer had a partner. Did you look at the business differently? Because when you start with a partnership, you have a division of labor, and now all of a sudden it's all on you.
Yeah.
Was there a moment where you thought, maybe I shouldn't do this? Or maybe I'm already down this path, but things have changed. What do I do now?
Yeah. So our partnership was unique because he was based out of San Francisco. So he was flying here a bunch to help with the business. But as a business partner, I'm kind of hard to match because I have a lot of energy and I'm really determined and I just don't stop. So I think it makes me a difficult partner to have on the outside because people are probably like, ah, like they're like, all right, man, we getting lunch, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna work through lunch. It's like that kind of thing, where it's like every time I work through lunch, I guess at some point they probably go through a round of emotions that's either like guilty or just disconnected and like, dang, this guy's working hard. I can't match it. I feel like it's not fair. I feel like there's something, and so we kind of got to a point where I was just working a lot on it, and he felt a little left out, not because I was working hard, but just inherently because he wasn't involved. And so I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm going to the kitchen to roast. I'll let you know how it goes," and I was really close to all of it. And so I think that naturally created a divide between us and just between his relationship with himself and the organization. Yeah, we had like a bunch of calls, and eventually we had a call just both agreeing that we're like, yeah, like I was like, I don't want to put pressure on you. I know I'm going to work a lot and I don't want you to feel like you're missing out. And he was like, yeah, I don't want to feel like I'm not inputting enough into it. And so we really both agreed that we didn't want to keep going down this path at any impact to the friendship. And so he was kind enough to leave with me the investment that he started with, which I mean wasn't a lot compared to today, but was a decent amount of money compared to
Sure.
nothing. So
You never had a moment of like, maybe this isn't going to work without him. You just thought, no, I'm just shifting midstream because this is the path I'm on. I'm already in.
that's true. I didn't really answer your question.
I think what you're saying is really valuable for entrepreneurs who might be listening. I think having similar motors isn't something that I hear discussed a lot.
Mhm.
Two people can have the same vision and the same goal, but if they're not on the same, like, if they don't have the same energy level or the same timeline of when they expect to get there, that can cause unexpected pressure on a business and on a friendship or relationship that you just people don't think about up front. I
Yeah.
actually have experience with this very thing. And so it's when I was hearing you say it, I was seeing it in my head as it happened to me. And it wasn't that either of us had bad intentions. It's just that we were getting there on at a different speed. One of us was
Yeah.
taking surface streets and one of us was on the highway.
Right. It's just a simple case of like misalignment.
Yeah,
And I think, to answer your question explicitly, I didn't really notice a change. I was working really hard and doing a lot of the work, and we both recognized that. And I didn't resent him for it or anything. He almost felt more guilty, that he couldn't be more of a part of it. But I just can't change that about me, not yet at least. Maybe I need to learn how or how to tweak it, but I definitely was not ready to slow down. And so yeah, when things divided, I was still just moving fast, and if anything it felt a little lightening because I didn't have to. I was just always worried. I didn't want to push him too hard. I didn't want anything to feel like it wasn't truly coming from him. So I didn't want to say, hey, I need you to fly down here. It was more so like, hey, I don't want to, make you do any chance, dude, you would want to fly out here. It's totally up to you. And just having to go through that whole chain, just, I think made things really uncomfortable just over time. Not really uncomfortable, but just internally it felt awkward and it felt like I was asking too much. And so that whole thing, once I kind of let that go, it was like, okay, I get to like turn to my partner who's now me and it's like, do you want to go to the kitchen? It's like, of course. And so I just go to the kitchen and I work on this, and then I'm trying to meet business owners and I can just go talk to them myself and I don't have check with anybody or talk to anybody about it. Not that I didn't like checks and balances or I didn't like having a second opinion, but it just, it streamlined things quite literally. So
Sure. You can make mistakes faster and recover and adjust, and it's as a whole
yeah.
process to it. So I want to make sure that I'm clear kind of on the timeline. At this point, you are roasting coffee.
Correct. We bought the roaster together.
Okay.
And so we bought one used off of a local cafe owner and he was upgrading. So we just picked that one up and we got a pretty good deal on it. And then we just started to roast on that and we're making like really bad coffee. And that's kind of where we are today. Really bad coffee, roasting, no pop ups. We did one or two pop ups on our patio with our home Breville barista machines and some beans from Stereoscope, and that's kind of where we are right now.
Right now, today, or right now in the story?
Right now in the story, in the timeline.
Gotcha. At what point are you roasting and you're going, you know what, these aren't too bad. When I
Yeah.
think about those Stumptowns I had years ago, these are on that scale somewhere.
Yeah, so my business partner was really smart, and roasting with him was a really good experience because we would get really nitty gritty and we would question each other and try to think about it and understand roasting well. And so when I had to move on my own to roast, I was kind of in this little box by myself and just like really kind of stressing out about it. None of the coffee was tasting good. I didn't know why. I was trying to reach out to all these roasters and try to meet somebody who could try to help me, and over time I found a few voices and people I got to meet, and I just met maybe three people once, all once alone, so three meetings with three separate people. Each meeting I asked questions, and then the next meeting I asked more questions, maybe more in depth, and then the final meeting with a different person I asked more meetings more in depth, and then, or sorry, more questions more in depth. And then by then I felt like I understood a lot of the things that I was either approaching in the wrong way or just things that weren't as important as I was making them. And so when I went back to roast after all of this kind of question and answer session, all these question and answer sessions that I had, I feel like I was able to come out of that with a better understanding and actually roast coffee that was getting better. And then finally, I got to a point probably about 6 to 8 months of roasting, like nonstop on our little sample roaster, just giving away these beans for either really low price or for free. And some people were like, "This is the best coffee I've ever had." I was like, "No, it's not. It's not." And then after that like trial period of me roasting, I, like you said, I got to that point where I was comfortable with the product, and then I started popping up. That was kind of my timeline. And some people are like, I started roasting good coffee in like, a month, and I'm like, well, it took me 6 to 8, and I was just staring there by myself, and I still have so much to learn as a roaster. I mean, I am excited to learn and grow as a roaster. However, right now I'm comfortable with the product and I see customers' reactions, and I've had people who have reputable experience in coffee and have said the coffee's good. So I know generally that it's good enough to serve, and I'm proud of the product today. So
You get to this point where you're like, okay, I'm going to put this stuff out into the world. I'm going to start doing these pop-ups. You mentioned earlier about creating an experience. One thing I noticed when I was researching, which is just a fancy way of saying Googling, Anomaly, is there's a lot of art incorporated into your brand. I think there's some musical aspects to it. You earlier mentioned, like brands like REI and Patagonia that you're popping up that have a very distinctive brand identity. How did you decide what this brand identity would be, especially since you had a business partner? I'm assuming at some point it was a reflection of both of your visions. And now that it's you, has it transitioned into being kind of this is kind of who you would be if you weren't doing coffee? You'd be interested in these things. Where did this ethos come from? How did you kind of settle on, or how did you get to a point in this variation of Anomaly that this is kind of what we represent? This is what we believe in. This is what we want to put out there in the world.
yeah, it's actually kind of funny because I think where Anomaly is today is exactly how my partner and I had envisioned it. It's just we didn't get there. It took time to get there, and some of that was so slow and challenging. But now that we are here, it really is a representation of our passions and also our characteristics as people and our behavior. And so one of the biggest things that's important to me is collaboration. And I've done it all throughout my life. I was speaking with somebody yesterday and recounting on, uh, I kind of forgot about this whole thing, but I just did this in every step of my life, in high school, in middle school, in high school, in college. I did it everywhere just because I wanted to. And so in high school, I remember just meeting this speaker from the White House. He was a lawyer from the White House and he spoke at our school, and I chatted with him. I was like, whatever you're doing sounds really cool. I just want to get involved. And I ended up like attempting to start a mentoring program from elementary to middle to high school, like pairing one kid in each, and they could be like mentors for each other. And so like that was just a form of collaboration. And every step of the way in college, I created I with my brother, we built a sports club, and it was all about inclusive sports for people of all skill levels, and people could come together and play sports with no skill requirement. And it was really fun. And then we did a lot of philanthropic events through that, and it was all about bringing different people together from different communities. And so every step of the way I did stuff like that. And now I got to have my own platform as a small business owner. And then I was like, okay, I have this business. I am making coffee, but I want to meet a bunch of people. I want to learn about other people. And so I started going down the rabbit holes of the things I like: art, music, physical art like ceramics, drawings, illustrations, etc. And so the first instance of collaboration with art was I was coming up with a bag label, and we had our logo already. And then I was like, how do I fill the rest of the bag label? And so I just kind of stumbled across a good friend of mine from back in the day. And I saw that he was making art these days. And so I reached out to him. I was like, you should get art on our coffee bag. And then we set up a few meetings. I told him like, I think I want like it to look like this and represent the origin. And then like we came back and I was like, he was struggling with it. And I was like, you know what? I think this is the wrong approach. Why don't you just create any art that you really want to create, and we'll come back and look at it and see how we can fit it on the bag. You have like a 5-inch by like 7-inch, section. You can, yada, yada. And so we came back and he showed me the first thing, and I was like, what do you think of it? He's like, I like it. I was like, dude, I love it. Let's do it. So we put it on the bag, and then I used them for another bag. And then I had a coworker that was an artist, and I was like, can you create art for the bag? I want to see what that looks like. And so he kind of created his own thing. And then from there, it's just like, I can have a canvas that is the bag label for artists. And that's a way that I can collaborate with artists. And it's like my excuse to work with cool artists. And then from there, it was like, well, I'm already collaborating with artists. What else can I do? So then we started incorporating ceramics and local ceramicists, and then going to record shops and saying, hey, can we curate a collection of records? You kind of go through your collection, pick out a few, I'll buy them, and we'll show them and list them for sale for customers. And I'll tell them it's coming from you, and hopefully push a little traffic your way. And then the collaboration in my mind never ended. I don't have a limit in the ways we can collaborate. We collaborate with small businesses, and every time I go to businesses, I ask to collaborate in ways that I just think of and that are unique to me. And even I think when we chatted, I was like, hey, what do you think about doing this like different thing? And you're like, I have never had anybody ask me to do anything other than just show up on the podcast.
That's true.
And and
I,
that is just me. That's how I operate. I just think of those unique things that I'm just like, okay, I bet we could do this cool thing that nobody's ever done.
I'm going to be honest with you here, Noah. When we had that phone call, I thought there's no way I'm going to like be able to turn this guy away. I'm just going to let him be on the show, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, that was I bet it took you by surprise too, because you were like, what the heck? Because I also like, emails for me are tough because often it takes like 10 email exchanges to get through what you could in one phone call. So
Mhm.
I'll always tell people, just call me, just call me. Let's just like chat about it real quick. We can get through, 10 iterations of an email through one call. And then it's sometimes though a lot for people. And I think, yeah, that's just kind of who I am.
I love the enthusiasm of it, but you're right. It did take me by surprise. But again, it's because I'm usually the one reaching out to other people. And I
Yeah.
have found that it's easier for me to get through with an email than a phone call because,
Yeah. Yeah.
like most of the world, when I call, I usually leave a message and no one ever hears it. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a small subsect of people like you yet that are like, let's talk. The Coffee People podcast is presented by Roastar Coffee Packaging. Roastar is a digital printing company that makes custom printed packaging for coffee products. They work with small, mid, and large coffee roasters nationwide. Go to roastar.com to learn more about their fast turnaround times, high-quality packaging products, sustainability efforts, and low printing minimums, which enable your small business to tell a really big story. If you are ready to upgrade those coffee bags, go to roastar.com. So you're running this business, you are collaborating and doing things that with people you want to work with and enjoying that. You're presenting your kind of vision of this coffee brand out there. What are some of the challenges of being a mobile business? Popping up and creating an experience in a bunch of different places is a challenge. What did you find? What were the advantages and what were the challenges of doing that?
Yeah, definitely a lot of challenges. It's a lot of it's a lot of packing up the same thing over and over again and figuring out how I can fit it in my Nissan Sentra. And people are often really impressed that I can fit it all in there. I think I inherited this skill from my mom that's like learning how to pack a space in the tightest, most nimble way possible. And I finally got a roof rack and a roof box for my Nissan Sentra, and now I put everything. I can fit like 5 boxes in there with my with so many extra things, and people are so surprised. And that freed up a lot of space in the back. So now I can fit like ice chest, like my grinder, everything in the back. My espresso machine rides shotgun, and then my whole table setup was chosen because we were doing a wedding and I needed to get to that wedding with a setup that worked. And so we basically chose all these like stainless tables that have 4 legs and stack up with like 2 shelves, a top and like a support shelf. And so I have 2 of those tables that all stack up, and I figured out how to kind of make them take up the least height. And then I have these like wooden panels that I use for kind of the sides and the back, where I put all the electrical and plumbing on the inside so you can't see any of it. And then my water reservoir and everything like that. And so I've like stacked it all up and it fits beautifully, and the legs go on the side of it. It's like everything works really well. And so, um, I think because I've developed such a nice system to it, the pop up isn't that challenging. I know where everything goes. I have everything really dialed in my head and what I need. And every time I always forget one thing, but I've had a few times where I've been pretty good and never missed a thing. There are some things that I forget here and there, depending on how late I was up the night before. But other than that, I mean, some of the challenges are like power requirements, like can I get 2 separate outlets that I can utilize at this place? Because if I throw everything on one outlet, I'm gonna blow the outlet. Just because our espresso machine is a commercial espresso machine, it's not just a home machine. So that thing's a tank. It can handle a lot of customers, but if I put it on the same unit as my pump for the water and the grinder, and they're all on one, then I'm blowing that thing, no doubt. So
Well, doing an espresso on a pop-up is already, a step above. It's not something I've ever done because of that reason, the power that you
yeah,
need to deal with it. I was listening to your description of packing the Nissan. I have a Toyota Prius, and so I go through a similar thing when I do
nice.
events. But it's almost like you're building and taking down your setup twice, because you're building it
Yeah,
once in the car, pulling it all
yeah.
out in pieces, and then rebuilding it again, and to make it look presentable.
Exactly.
What about advantages? Is there any advantage that you find for this business to be a pop-up based?
Heck yeah. I I love doing it that way. I love being able to go to different people and reaching out to businesses, telling them I can bring my business to your customer base. I can bring our experience to your customer base. And that in itself is so much fun. To me, it has all the characteristics of what I want to be, and who I want to collaborate with, and the breadth that I want to cover. I don't want to just have a brick and mortar where I just am stuck in one spot, and everybody can and come through, and that's a cool thing in itself. But I really currently appreciate the flexibility of being able to take this business and my experience and meet 100 new people every day or every time I do it in completely different locations. I can go as far north as you want. I can go up to San Francisco. I could drive it all up to San Francisco. I could drive it all the way down to San Diego. We could literally go anywhere. And I'm in a Nissan Sentra. I don't even have a van that is very capable to do this. I'm doing it in this, and I can fit an extra person in the car. So I I have that thing packed to a T. So yeah, it's just the way that I want it currently, and I'm sure that will change. If there's one thing I've learned through doing this business is that pivoting happens, and I've pivoted so much on what I thought I wanted by just doing it and then saying, "Oh, you know what? That's actually not how I thought it would turn out. I want to do something else." But right now it is that pop-up style, and I really enjoy it, and the businesses that I pop up at really see the value in it because they don't want something permanent. They just want this experience maybe once a month or once a weekend or something like that. And so I can easily walk away from it and give them exactly that. So it's low stakes for them.
Sure. Something you do that I am personally excited about and passionate about. It's the reason I wanted to connect with you is because I think I asked if I could come along, but you offer the delivery of your coffee by bicycle in Long Beach. But what does that entail? So how does that work? If somebody orders coffee online and they choose the bike delivery option, what happens then?
Yeah, so I'll be honest that not a lot of people have used it. I've only,
Ugh,
and that's
I
it's
would, but I'm
probably
probably like 80 miles from you.
well, we can make it happen. That would be a fun trip. Um, but I think it's probably because I'm not an e-commerce guy and I don't push sales online a ton. I'll be honest. Like, it's not something I've focused on. I just have it there if like people want to order online or even from the East Coast, they want to order coffee, I can ship to them. And so because of that, I have it there as an option, and only a few people have done it so far. But basically, what it looks like is if you're within certain zip codes in Long Beach and it's listed on our website, and once you put in your address, if you put in that zip code, it shows up as an option for delivery. You can choose local bike delivery. And so if you do that, I will basically deliver it to you anytime between Saturday and Sunday. And then that way you can have your coffee fresh on Monday morning. So it's just like a me biking around with a bag of coffee in my in my cart, and then like pit stopping at the location, and then snapping a pic of it and sending it to them saying the order's been fulfilled. So
Hopefully you'll consider this my application for when you grow big enough that you have enough deliveries. I'll come up to Long Beach once a week and deliver coffee by bike. That would be like my dream job.
I will definitely need support.
Before we get to the end of this show, I want to just ask, where do you see this business going?
That's a great question. I feel like I run it through my brain every time, like every day, every week, and I revisit it a ton. I'm such a doer in like the now that it's sometimes hard for me to envision what it looks like in the future. And part of me is very logistical, and I think of what's working now, what are my options, and right now I'm not even close to having the funds to open my own cafe. And so to me it's almost like I don't even think about that. I don't even look in the future of having my own cafe. But kind of like I mentioned, and going into the new year, my goal is to take all of these pop-ups that we've done, and we've done over 30 different businesses that we've popped up with since May. And some we've come back to because we really like the business owners or we like the space and they wanted us back. And so coming into the new year, my plan was just to iron out the same four pop-ups every month for the entire year. That's kind of something I want to build some normalcy in our schedule and allow me to also focus on obtaining a new wholesale client and then retaining those two or three. And so the wholesale roasting is something that I want to dive into more. So I think in the new year, it's going to look like you're going to see me saying every third Sunday we're here, every second Saturday we're here, every first, blank we're here. And then just focusing as well on that roasting aspect, and then just more content creation and kind of growing the account slowly through that through that lens, and seeing where the relationships, where some of those businesses goes. So, REI, and we do a local climbing gym here in Long Beach, and yeah, just kind of seeing what happens, and keep being myself, keep pushing good coffee, and keep meeting new people. And I mean, we meet like 100 people every day, and they're all like, "You own this business?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm serving you coffee. I'm checking you out on the register, and I own the business." And those conversations spark up interesting chances of interactions later on. People asking us, "Hey, I saw you guys. I love what you did. Can you come bring it over here to my school and pop up, for our parents and stuff like that." And wedding gigs and interesting opportunities arise through all of that exposure to people. So, yeah, that's kind of the vision for the new year.
Is there anything that we didn't cover today that's important for people to know about Anomaly Coffee, about you?
Um, I think the biggest thing is people are often taken aback by me. I think until you meet me and you talk to me and you get to know me a little bit, you really might not know that I'm actually genuine and I mean the things that I say, and I really am trying to collaborate in unique ways. And when I ask people, "Hey, we should do this thing," they're like, "Why would you want to do that?" Even collaborating with other roasters, saying like, "Hey, I want to like swap beans for a pop-up," and they're like, "What?" Like, why would you not sell your own beans? And I'm like, "Because I just want to collaborate. I want to show people that roasters can collaborate in unique ways. I can pop up with your beans and say, 'Hey, this is a great roaster. You should go try their beans,' and highlight other roasters." And I think there's not a lot of people out there doing that. And so I think when people talk to me and actually get to know me, they're like, "Dang, this guy actually cares and he wants to do these things." But through a DM or even a phone call once, maybe, people people might not really understand that. And so in general, the theme here is I urge people to step outside of their bubble and really try to get to understand people. I mean, just because you get recommendations from other people that this person's great or this business is great, like, try to step outside of that bubble and go into small businesses you'll never get the chance to meet or you never would have stumbled upon on your own, and try to introduce yourself to those small business owners and get to meet other people. And I think once we really genuinely try to connect with others, then we'll really realize that there are these like gems hidden there. You just have to go out and search for them. So I think that's the one thing just I want to highlight, is to really step outside your bubble, give people a chance, and yeah, people have done it for me, and it's really helped me get to where I am today. So yeah,
The next time you're out and about, you're exploring, you stop into somebody else's coffee shop or coffee roaster, what are you going to order?
I am going to get a cortado with oat milk.
Easy peasy. Noah, I really appreciate you spending an hour with me this morning. I really enjoyed getting to know you today a little bit more, and I'm looking forward to seeing what some of these collaborations are coming forth. And for anyone listening, where can we send them online to find you, or at least get like a visual to what we're talking about?
Yeah, so two places you can go. One on Instagram, we're Anomaly, that's ALY .coffee.co. And then online, we're anomalycoffeecompany.com. Pretty straightforward. But everybody spells Anomaly OLY. And I'm like, that's just not how it's spelled. But that's okay.
We'll make sure they get to the right place. Thank you, Noah, again for being here, and I'm looking forward to a cup of coffee with you someday.
Yeah, Ryan, make your bike up here, man, and I'll get you a ton of coffee. Thanks for having me.
Okay, some key takeaways from today. Noah's coffee journey started 5 years ago. He had some concerns about the need for caffeine, but a bit of research and tasting some flavorful coffees from Stumptown got him started down this path. I have a feeling that Noah doesn't do many things halfway. In his words, he's, quote, "the guy who, if you have something you want to do, I'll hold you to it and push you at it." As such, he's a self-taught coffee person who uses enthusiasm and passion to keep pushing forward, not without fear, but with the belief that the answers will be found, if not of his own accord, through collaboration with others. His journey exemplifies that everyone is on their own timeline, when it comes to building a foundational knowledge base. It took him 6 to 8 months to feel comfortable with the quality of the coffee he was roasting. It took asking questions, testing, asking more questions, and so on before he was really ready to begin popping up as Anomaly Coffee, which he uses as a platform for finding fun, cool, creative collaborators in a wide variety of industries to share his coffee and scratch his own desire to work in art and music and brand building. There are a lot of challenges to running a pop-up based business, but when I ask Noah if there are any advantages, his response is telling. "Heck yeah," he exclaimed. I think it is Noah's positivity that I enjoyed most during our chat, and finally on that note, we closed out with Noah asking the rest of us to step outside our bubbles and give new people, new businesses, and by extension, new ideas a chance. It's why he's succeeding, and he'd like to pay it forward. Thanks to Noah for spending some time with us for this episode of Coffee People. Anomaly Coffee Co. can be found online at anomalycoffeecompany.com. You'll find that link in this show's podcast notes, and of course on coffeepeoplepodcast.com. That is also where you'll find this pod's newsletter, which not only features a recap of this episode, but Coffee Smarter education, barista features, and even interviews with the designers of our favorite coffee packaging. If you're in the coffee industry or you're looking to grow in the industry, check out our Coffee Smarter Pro thread, where we'll be collecting the wisdom of past and future guests, as well as targeted advice from the founders of Hosea Coffee Source and Crossings Coffee. Head to coffeepeoplepodcast.com to check it out and support this show. And if you find yourself in Southern California over the next few weeks, don't forget to stop by Zoombar Coffee and Tea, Steady State Coffee Roasting, Camp Coffee Company, and or Acento Coffee Roasters to guess how many beans are in the jar. More than 500 people have already guessed in our contest, and I haven't seen any exact answers yet. Winners will be announced on December 14th. Thanks to all of the rest of our great industry partners, including Roastery Coffee Packaging, our presenting sponsor. They are an excellent coffee packaging company that tells the big stories of small business coffee roasters. Learn more at roastery.com. And Mostra Coffee Company, Ascend Coffee Roasters, Ignite Coffee Company, Maria Coffee, Cape Horn Coffee Importers, San Franciscan Roaster Company, Crossings Coffee, Civets Roasting Machines, First Light Coffee Whiskey, Hosea Coffee Source, and Coffee Cycle Roasting. I'll be at Coffee Cycle in Pacific Beach, San Diego for a meet and greet and a maker's market this Saturday, December 9th. Stop by and say hi. Better yet, ride your bicycle down and let's have a cup of coffee. If you can't make it, I still encourage you to shop local and at your favorite coffee shops as much as possible this holiday season. This show is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network, and this episode has been written, produced, and recorded by me, Ryan Woldt. Always tip your baristas, and be sure to drink good coffee. Hello? Are you there? The show is over, but I wanted to share something I learned about coffee this week. I mean, I knew this theoretically, but I experienced it firsthand and continue to experience it daily. It's that when considering the cost of a coffee grinder, you really want to consider both the anticipated lifespan and whether the grinder can be fixed if something breaks. I have a lower-end grinder. I always have. I didn't want to replace it until I needed to, just to prevent more waste. It died this week. It still has power, but the motor no longer works and the burrs no longer spin. There is no real way to fix it short of hiring an engineer, which is cost prohibitive. For my next grinder, I'll be purchasing something that is designed to be fixed, not designed to become obsolete. It'll cost about 50% more in the short term, but considering the costs of replacing a grinder every half decade or so, it'll end up paying for itself. Not to mention, keep some plastic and materials out of the landfill. This podcast is supported by Ignite Coffee Company, in Oceanside, California. You can also find them online at ignitecoffeecompany.com. Founder Tyler Whitehead is a third-generation Oceanside entrepreneur whose dream has always been to provide a welcoming space where his fellow community members can mingle, study, and even create the plan to pursue their own dreams, all over a cup of really, really, really good coffee. That's 3 reallys, so you know it's true. Visit Ignite Coffee Company on Mission Avenue in downtown Oceanside, or order coffee beans roasted fresh for you on ignitecoffeecompany.com. I will. I have biked up to Long Beach from my house, but I don't anymore because going through Camp Pendleton is Sketchville.
Yeah, it definitely
You
is.
you have to sign this piece of paper if you want to ride your bike through that says that if you get shot, it's not their fault.
Really?
And the first time you just go, oh, whatever, it's a waiver. But then when you're riding through and you hear live fire, you're like, oh.